Do you want to bring your blood sugar down quickly and keep it at non-diabetic levels? It's not complicated. No matter if you live with type 1, type 2 or any other form of diabetes. But I get it, if you clicked on this video, you might be struggling right now. Your blood sugar might already be elevated early in the morning when you wake up. Or your blood sugar might spike too high after you eat a meal. Or you might be at a blood sugar roller coaster, spiking too high and crashing too low throughout the day. But don't worry, each of these three problems can be eliminated. In fact, in this video I'm gonna teach you 10 simple hacks to fix each of these problems. So 30 blood sugar hacks in total. But let's take it step by step and focus on lowering your morning blood sugar first. As always, talk to your healthcare professional first to see if these hacks might work for you. Wouldn't it be great to wake up with a fasting blood sugar like this every day? If you've ever felt desperate about your high morning glucose levels, you're not alone. I've been right there with you. But just recently something changed that turned my desperation into hope. I think I found a way to bring my morning glucose from diabetic levels to non-diabetic levels for good. I also discovered a delicious breakfast meal that doesn't spike my blood sugar.
This is so good.
Over the past 6 months, I dedicated every single day of my life to unraveling the mysteries of my fasting blood sugar levels. I paid close attention to everything I do, everything I eat, and how I can optimize my daily routine and medication regimen. I was simply trying to find ways to hack my own body to bring my morning glucose down. And guess what? It's been a game changer for me. I came up with 10 blood sugar hacks that you should absolutely consider if you're really trying to fix your morning glucose. Starting with blood sugar hack number 10, and this one really surprised me. I found out that my morning blood sugar level very much depends on what I eat the night before. When I eat pizza for dinner, it will spike my blood sugar at night and the glucose will remain elevated, leading to a higher morning blood sugar than what I would like to see. But when I eat quinoa salad for dinner with beans, corn, lots of vegetables and olives, my blood sugar only goes up slightly after dinner and then it goes back down and my fasting glucose is perfect. Now the reason for that is that pizza is rich in carbohydrates but also loaded with fat. The carbs spike my blood sugar and the fats will keep it elevated for up to 12 hours. On the other hand, the quinoa salad is rich in fiber and protein and relatively low in fat. The carbs from the quinoa and beans raise my blood sugar just a bit, but the fiber and protein ensures a slower release of glucose and lower glucose overnight and in the morning. So my hack number 10 to lower morning blood sugar is eating a healthy, balanced dinner consisting primarily of whole foods rich in both protein and fiber. Now it is perfectly fine to include both carbs and fat, but as you could see, I get much better results with complex carbohydrates, things like quinoa, lentil or chickpea, and healthy fats, things like avocado, Greek yogurt or extra virgin olive oil. On this screen you can see a full list of foods that will make a perfect addition to your dinner plate. Moving on to my next hack for fixing morning blood glucose. I would have never believed that this one really makes a difference, but during my 6 months experiment I learned that it really does. It also has to do with dinner, but this time it's not about what you eat for dinner, but when you eat dinner. When I ate my dinner after 8 p.m., my blood sugar was slightly elevated throughout the night and in the morning. But when I ate my dinner before 7 p.m., my blood sugar stayed closer to normal non-diabetic levels. The difference is clearly visible in this graph. Now you might say, okay Tom, this worked for you, but it might not work for everyone. Okay, fair point. But I digged even deeper and I found a study where researchers compared the glucose levels of two groups of patients. One group ate dinner at 6 p.m., the other group ate dinner at 9 p.m. Now both groups ate exactly the same food, of course. And the result was that the group that ate dinner earlier not only had lower morning glucose, but lower glucose levels throughout the entire following day. So my hack number 9 is really simple. Eat your dinner early, ideally before 7 p.m. But the only thing we need to be careful about with this approach is late night snacking. Because it doesn't matter when you eat dinner if you hoover a bag of chips on the couch while watching TV after that. If you really need that late night snack, try to keep it healthy. Things like olives or nuts in their natural form or veggie sticks with hummus are much better options. That way you're much more likely to lower your blood glucose levels in the morning back to normal. But before we talk about more hacks, let's talk about what normal glucose actually is. A normal fasting blood glucose level for someone without diabetes is 70 to 99 milligrams per deciliter. Fasting blood glucose levels between 100 and 125 milligrams per deciliter usually means that you have prediabetes. And fasting blood glucose level 126 milligrams per deciliter or higher usually means you have diabetes. But even after you've been diagnosed with diabetes, it is still possible to achieve those normal glucose levels most of the time. And that's exactly what I was able to do during this 6-month experiment. The next thing that helped me get there was regular exercise. Wait, don't click away. I know you've heard that before, but let me explain. Exercise is like a magic pill that will make you more insulin sensitive, and that will ultimately bring your morning blood sugar down. Look at this. During my 6-month experiment, I compared my blood sugar levels at night and in the morning following a workout. These are in blue. And I compared them with nights and mornings that didn't follow the workout. These are in red. The average fasting blood sugar on days following the workout was 95, and the average fasting blood sugar on days that didn't follow a workout was 115. I could clearly see the positive impact that physical activity had on my blood sugar levels. Now, exercise, just like whole foods diets, are often underestimated because they don't bring the immediate results like some medications do. But the kind of physical activity I've been doing over the past 6 months is a combination of strength training, mobility training, and zone 2 cardio. I think these kinds of exercise are the best to help me feel good and improve my insulin sensitivity. And I tried my best to do some kind of exercise for about 60 minutes at least 4 times a week. But really, any kind of physical activity you can squeeze in your schedule is worth it. No matter if you live with type 1, type 2, LADA, or any other sort of diabetes. When you exercise regularly, eat healthy, and stay patient, you will see improvements to not only your morning glucose levels, but to your overall glucose levels, and it will come sooner than you think. And there is one more major benefit to this approach, because as you become more insulin sensitive, your blood sugar will become more predictable, and this will make it much more easier to manage your diabetes and your blood sugar in the long run. Moving on to hack number 7 on how to fix your morning glucose. This one is a lot easier than exercise, trust me, but for me, it was the most surprising thing that I found out during my experiment. On most nights, I managed to get more than 7 hours of good quality uninterrupted sleep. You can see that during those nights, my blood sugar stayed fairly stable and my fasting glucose in the morning is perfect. But when I got to bed late, or when I woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't fall asleep again, my glucose spiked during nighttime, which led to an elevated morning blood sugar. So my hack number 7, get a good night's sleep. I personally try to sleep about 7 to 8 hours a day, and I try to go to bed early, ideally around 9 p.m. or 9:30 p.m. because there are many studies that show that the best quality sleep we can get is before midnight. And this works really well, especially on those days when I do some kind of physical activity, because that activity makes me tired and I fall asleep early really easily. Other things that help me get good quality sleep are avoiding caffeinated drinks in the afternoon or evening, not staring at any screen for about half an hour before I go to bed, and sleeping in a room with relatively low temperature. Let's move to another hack to lower morning blood sugar. You see, a common cause of elevated morning glucose that many diabetics struggle with is dawn phenomenon. Between 3 a.m. and 8 a.m. our body releases cortisol and growth hormone. These hormones signal your liver to make glucose. Now, the glucose is supposed to provide energy to help wake you up, but it also spikes your blood sugar. And that's kind of a problem if you're diabetic. Thankfully, there are ways to deal with dawn phenomenon, and we're gonna get to them in a second. But first, we need to find out if dawn phenomenon is really the driving force of your elevated morning blood sugar, or if it's something else. And the only way you can really find that out is by pricking your finger and checking your blood sugar every 2 hours throughout the night and throughout the morning, or wearing a continuous glucose monitor which collects the blood sugar data for you. And that's exactly what I've been doing every night over the past 6 months. I kept a journal where I tracked my blood sugar numbers and took notes of what I ate, what medications I took, what physical activity did, and how I felt. Once a week, I analyzed all the data in my journal, and this was the game changer. After a few months, I finally really started to understand what's causing my blood sugar in the morning being elevated. Just for the record, hack number 6, check your blood sugar frequently, ideally using a CGM, and keep a detailed journal. Moving on to the next hack to lower morning blood sugar. This one was really really big for me, and it's optimizing insulin. I know that most of you watching need to inject insulin externally, but even if you don't, it's super important to understand how insulin works and how it can help you fight that morning blood sugar spike. Remember, we talked about liver making more glucose early in the morning and raising our blood sugar. What happens next in a non-diabetic body is that pancreas responds and releases insulin to regulate your blood sugar. But if you live with diabetes, we have a problem because your pancreas either doesn't make any insulin or your body is not able to use that insulin effectively and your blood sugar remains elevated. Now, a simple solution to that is to inject the right amount of insulin at the right time to sort of imitate what's happening in the healthy body. Now, I said it's simple, but it's not easy. During my 6 months experiment, I discovered that my blood sugar always starts spiking around 6 a.m., which is when I usually get up, and it continues spiking until about 9 a.m. A great example of dawn effect in action. But I wanted to get rid of that spike, and because I use insulin pump, what I did was simply I increased my basal insulin dose between 3:30 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. and this helped me to eliminate about 80% of that spike. See the difference between the blue line and the red line? Now I understand that not all of you take insulin externally and not all of you have access or want to use an insulin pump, but there are other things you can do. The key thing I like to focus on is reducing insulin resistance and improving insulin sensitivity with regular exercise and healthy diet. But if you are on multiple daily injections and take basal insulin like Lantus, Tresiba, Levemir or Tuheo and struggle with an early morning spike, you might need to increase that long-lasting insulin dose as well, or change the timing when you take that long-lasting insulin. To get the optimal effect, some people need to take their long-lasting insulin before they go to bed, some in the morning, and some even split the dose and take portion of it at different times of day. But before you make any changes, please keep in mind there is no one-size-fits-all solution. So carefully analyze your blood sugar trends and discuss your treatment with a medical professional. Now here is the shocking discovery I made about my blood sugar during the experiment. On 95% of the nights, I didn't drink any alcohol. Here you can see how my average glucose graph looked on those nights without alcohol. The morning blood sugar was not always perfect, but it was okay. But on several nights, I decided to drink a couple shots of whiskey for the sake of this experiment. And something really interesting happened. I noticed that my blood sugar started dropping between 3 and 4 a.m. and I woke up with a non-diabetic morning blood sugar every time after drinking the whiskey. The impact of alcohol is clearly noticeable in this graph. So is hack number 4 drinking a couple shots of whiskey before bedtime? Well, that's really up to you, but let me explain what whiskey does and what other kinds of alcohol do to our blood sugar. And we need to talk about liver again, because as you mentioned earlier in this video, liver releases glucose in early morning hours, and this glucose spikes our blood sugar. But another function of liver is to break down alcohol so it can go away from our body. Now the liver is not good at multitasking, and apparently it chooses to metabolize alcohol over releasing glucose. And that's why my blood sugar not only didn't spike in the early mornings after drinking, but it actually dropped even lower. Now this can look as a good thing at first, but it can easily turn into a bad thing. If you drink too much, your blood sugar might drop too low while you sleep. And if you drink too often, the alcohol will destroy your liver over time. Another thing to be careful about is that not every alcohol is created equal. Drinks like whiskey, vodka or dry wine have zero or very little carbs, and they will not spike your blood sugar. But beer or sweet cocktails with added sugar are full of carbs, and they might spike your blood sugar to the moon, as you can see in this chart. Now you're probably going to agree with me when I say that drinking alcohol excessively is not a good long-term plan to reduce your morning blood sugar. But what about water, coffee or other drinks? Can they help? Let's have a look right now, and please don't skip this part, because the last drink I'm going to talk about might become a game changer for you. During my 6-month experiment, I drank a big glass of water before going to bed and another big glass of water right after I woke up. I did that every other day. And here is my average blood sugar graph from those days when I did drink water. You can see that my average fasting blood sugar was 107 and my average blood sugar 2 hours after eating breakfast was 140. On the days when I did not drink the extra water, my average blood sugar graph life was not very different. In fact, my average fasting blood sugar was actually slightly better, only 105, and my average blood sugar 2 hours after eating breakfast was slightly worse, 143. So drinking extra water didn't make a big difference for me. But there have been studies done which showed that not drinking enough water can lead to increased risk of type 2 diabetes. So watch out for that. It is also important to stay hydrated anytime you're using a continuous glucose monitors, because the accuracy of CGM readings can be negatively impacted and they might be off whenever you are dehydrated. Now, one drink that impacts my blood sugar the most is coffee. I used to start my day with a cup of coffee, but I don't do that anymore, and here is why. I compared my morning blood sugar levels on the mornings when I didn't drink any coffee, in blue, and on the mornings when I drank coffee as the first thing after waking up. These are in red. Although coffee has 0 carbs, we can see a clear spike in the average blood sugar caused by the coffee. A cup of coffee spikes my blood sugar by about 30 to 40 milligrams per deciliter when I drink it first thing in the morning. But interestingly, when I drink coffee a little bit later in the morning on the days like today, it almost doesn't spike my blood sugar at all. And that's why my hack number 3 to lower morning blood sugar is don't drink coffee first thing in the morning. It won't necessarily help you to lower fasting blood sugar, but it will help you to avoid the spike after you're getting up. And here is another tip for a drink. This one has been proved by many studies to lower fasting blood sugar. Apple cider vinegar. In an American Diabetes Association study, they compared 2 groups of diabetics. One group consumed 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar before bedtime, the other did not. The group that did take the vinegar saw a 4 to 6% reduction in their morning blood glucose levels. And it certainly did help them fight the dawn effect. Of course, when I saw these results, I immediately decided to include ACV or apple cider vinegar to my experiment. Here are the results. In blue, you can see my average blood sugar levels at night and in the morning following a shot of vinegar before bed. And in red are my average blood sugar levels at night and in the morning without the vinegar. There is literally no difference. So apple cider vinegar didn't work for me, but the next thing I'm gonna talk about did work. And this next hack might be super helpful, especially for those of you who wake up with non-diabetic blood sugar but struggle with a blood sugar spike right after you get up. Remember, I told you earlier in this video that my blood sugar always starts spiking around 6 a.m. and it continues to spike until about 9 a.m. I also mentioned that when I increased my insulin, it helped me eliminate about 80% of that spike. I'm simply more insulin resistant early in the morning, and that's why I typically need more insulin during that time. And from my experience, most diabetics have the exact same problem. But during my 6-month experiment, I realized that increasing insulin is not the only way to deal with this. Another way to avoid that early morning spike was going for a run or doing a workout early in the morning, right after I woke up. Look at that. On the days I went for a 45-minute run between 6 and 7 a.m., I was able to completely eliminate the early morning spike. I was actually able to bring my blood sugar slightly lower. But now moving on to my absolute favorite hack on how to fix morning glucose levels, and that's my secret breakfast. This breakfast is low in carbs, high in fiber, and rich in both proteins and healthy fats. It's called shakshuka, and it's a savory masterpiece full of flavor. To make it, I use extra virgin olive oil and gently simmer a medium-sized onion and a medium-sized bell pepper. After about 5 minutes, I add my spices, a few cloves of garlic, ground cumin, paprika, and chili. After another couple minutes, I add a few ripe tomatoes or a small can of peeled tomatoes and cook the mixture for several more minutes until all the flavors connect. At this point, I'm adding chopped cilantro, giving the mixture another stir, and adding 3 eggs in these little wells. I'm gonna cook everything covered for about 5 more minutes because I want my eggs to be poached but not fully cooked, and voila, it's done. You can garnish everything with some more cilantro and parsley and just enjoy the delicious healthy breakfast. Guys and girls, I guarantee you will love this breakfast. It will satisfy your taste buds and it will keep your blood sugar in check. But I have 10 more hacks for you that will help you avoid that post-meal blood sugar spike, regardless of what you eat. So let's have a look at them right now. Wouldn't it be great to be able to eat everything we love and don't struggle with massive post-meal blood sugar spikes? Well, Jessie, aka Glucose Goddess, claims that she found a way how anyone can do it. You just need to follow her 10 easy blood sugar hacks. Actually, Jessie says that you don't even have to follow all 10 of these hacks. Just pick the ones that work for you, incorporate them in your daily routine, and get rid of that blood sugar roller coaster. The only problem is Jessie doesn't have diabetes. These hacks work for her, but will they actually work for someone living with type 1 or type 2 diabetes like you or me? Let's find out. And let me be completely honest with you. Blood sugar spikes after meal has always been something I struggled with big time. And I still do. Although I have my diabetes under control, I'm not perfect. And there are days when my glucose spikes quickly to 200. Or even 250, and only after that it goes back down. And these big blood glucose fluctuations usually leave me tired, low energy, and feeling not so great overall. So when I heard about Jessie's hacks, I really had to try them out and see for myself if they actually work for a diabetic. Let me show you what I found out. Let's start with blood sugar hack number 10. Don't eat naked carbs. A naked carb is any carbohydrate-rich food that is eaten in isolation, like toast with jam, a rice cake, or fruit juice. These are the worst things you can eat. They are pure starches and sugar, often heavily processed, and they will spike your blood sugar to the moon. When I eat just one slice of toast with jam, it takes me from 100, which is a healthy blood sugar, to 250. And even if I give myself insulin with that toast, because I'm an insulin dependent diabetic, that toast will still take me from 100 to 220 before my blood sugar starts going back down. And that's why I completely agree with Jessie on this one. Avoiding naked carbs really helps to reduce the post-meal blood sugar spikes. But what can we do to still be able to eat those carbs? Well, you need to keep watching, because all the remaining hacks in this video will help you find the answer to this question for you. Hack number 9 to avoid big blood sugar spikes after meal. Put some clothing on your carbs. When you're eating starches or sugar, glucose goddess recommend to always cover them with some fat, protein, or fiber. And here are a few examples of what you can do. If you really need to eat that chocolate cake, put a big spoon of Greek yogurt on it. If you really need to eat that slice of bread, make an avocado toast or a smoked salmon toast. If you really need that white rice or noodles from that Asian restaurant, order some steamed broccoli or green beans with it. And for the main course, go for anything that's not too sweet, because that sweet taste is usually achieved by adding refined sugar of some kind. And if you want to eat some fresh fruits, eat whole fruits and add some chia seed pudding. Chia seeds are full of fiber. If you put clothing on your carbs like this, the glucose will get to the bloodstream slower, and your blood sugar spike will be slower and less significant as well. When I was testing this hack, I really saw about 20% improvement in that blood sugar spike whenever I dressed my carbs the way I just explained. So I agree with Jessie on this one too. But please be careful, don't overrate this hack. Putting clothing on your carbs is a great tip, but it works best in combination with all the other hacks in this video. Moving on to hack number 8. Eat a savory breakfast, not a sweet one. According to the glucose goddess method, you should never eat anything sweet in the morning and always go for fat-based or protein-based foods for the breakfast. So replace a pancake with an omelette. You don't need to spread jam on that bread. Replace it with peanut butter. And so on. I attended the American Diabetes Association conference in San Diego last week, and funnily enough, there was not a lot of healthy options in the hotel where I was staying. And because I was testing these hacks, I ended up eating a savory breakfast from the buffet most of those days. A boiled egg, 2 slices of smoked salmon, avocado toast. I completely avoided all the breakfast cereals, granolas, pastry and cakes. And it worked really well. My blood sugar didn't spike to more than 150 on any of those days, although I finished my breakfast with a bowl of Greek yogurt with fresh blackberries. Jessie doesn't recommend eating fruit for breakfast though, but she does allow it as long as you stick to whole food options and eat it at the end of your breakfast meal, just like I did with the blackberries. According to her method, you should always eat the fruit in the same form you can find it in nature. So no jams, no juices, and no smoothies. And it makes sense because most of these whole fruits are loaded with fiber, which slows down the blood sugar spike. On the other hand, if you drink just a small glass of apple juice, you're basically eating all the sugar from 2 apples in just 5 seconds. That sugar gets in your bloodstream within a few minutes and your blood sugar spikes like crazy. I did that once during the conference just to test it, and when I did that, although I took insulin for that apple juice, my blood sugar spiked to 240. So savory breakfast is another great hack that does work for diabetics to lower that blood sugar spike after meal. If you feel that you're more insulin resistant in the morning, you could definitely try that out. But moving on to the glucose goddess hack number 7 to avoid big blood sugar spikes. Drink coffee only after you eat. Avoid coffee on empty stomach. Coffee is very sneaky. Although it has 0 carbs, when I drink black coffee in the morning, it spikes my blood sugar quite a bit. The caffeine in coffee causes our body to produce certain stimulating hormones, including adrenaline. And this can raise blood sugar. The interesting thing is that when I drink coffee later in my day, it usually doesn't spike my blood sugar at all. And that's why I completely agree with Jesse on this one. Don't drink coffee on an empty stomach, especially not in the morning. Moving on to hack number 6, which is super powerful, and not a lot of people actually know this. Eat food in the right order. There have been studies done that showed that this hack, eating foods in the right order, can reduce your blood sugar spike from that meal by 75%. Now, from my experience, this is heavily overrated. I've never seen a 75% lower hike from a meal just by changing the sequence in which I eat that meal. But I have seen about 20 to 30% improvements if I eat my foods in the right order. So here is what you want to do. Always eat veggies first, proteins and fats second, and any starches and sugars must go last. If you're having pasta with fish, broccoli, avocado and cookies, for example, start with the broccoli, then eat the avocado and fish and leave the pasta and the cookie at the end. Now, it's not always practical to do exactly this because most of the time a meal is combined from all these components. But when you're in a restaurant, for example, they usually give you bread on the table before they bring the main meal. That bread is almost always heavily processed, stripped out of all the fiber. The starch from that bread gets to your bloodstream very fast. So if you don't want your blood sugar to explode, don't eat that bread at the beginning. Get a portion of veggies or a salad with some olive oil and vinegar instead. This is by far the best appetizer you can have to avoid a big blood sugar spike from that main meal, whatever it is. Veggies are full of fiber, and that fiber, just like the fiber in the chia seeds, which I absolutely love, will cause that the glucose molecules will not be able to make their way to your bloodstream as much and as quickly. The glucose goddess recommends to add some olive oil, vinegar, or even cheese to dress those vegetables to make them taste good and to avoid you feeling low energy a few hours after you eat the meal. And by the way, the fat in the olive oil as well as vinegar acts as another shield to protect you from a big blood sugar spike. More about vinegar in a second. Let's conclude on hack 6 first. I completely agree on this one too. Meal sequencing does matter if you live with diabetes. But again, please don't overrate this hack. Eating foods in the right order is not always enough. It's best to combine this hack with all the other hacks in this video. Moving on to hack number 5 to reduce blood sugar spikes after meal. Eat slower and make breaks between meals for a secret exercise. This hack can make a difference, especially when you go for a meal to a fancy restaurant and you know you'll be eating a menu full of carbs that will consist of multiple courses. Appetizer, main course, or even 2 main courses and a dessert. The slower you eat and the longer breaks you make between the individual courses, the slower your blood sugar will spike. You can always ask the waiter to allow for a break between the starter and the main course, and then for another break between the main course and the dessert. For someone like me who is insulin dependent and need to inject pre-meal insulin, eating slower and making breaks is really powerful because I allow for some time for that insulin to kick in, and it can more effectively deal with those carbs that would normally spike my blood sugars. So this hack works really well for insulin dependent diabetics in my opinion. But I have to be honest with you. I think that for those who are not insulin dependent, this hack is not very powerful unless you combine it with a secret exercise. You can do this exercise under the table while sitting, and Jessie mentioned this exercise in one of her recent interviews. I actually made a video about this exercise a few weeks ago too. The exercise is called a soleus push-up. And here is how you do it. Just sit at the table with your knees at a 90-degree angle. Raise your heels as high as you can get it off the floor. Hold it really tightly for 1 or 2 seconds and then lower it back down. And repeat. The toes should be touching the floor for the whole time. I totally agree with Jessie on this one too. Soleus push-up is such a powerful exercise to avoid that blood sugar spike from the meal, or even to bring your blood sugars down when you need to. I did an experiment and I tried this exercise for 10 minutes. It lowered my blood sugar from 148 to 139. When I increased the time from 10 to 20 minutes, it lowered my blood sugar even more, by 23 milligrams per deciliter. And when I did this exercise for 30 minutes, it lowered my blood sugar by 38 milligrams per deciliter. And the best thing about this exercise is that you can do it even in a restaurant under the table and no one will really notice. Moving on to hack number 4. Eat sweet things only as a dessert. Sweet food is not forbidden under the glucose goddess method. Jessie actually encourages people to eat everything they love and following these hacks to avoid those blood sugar spikes. She actually admits that she loves sweets, and she specifically mentioned a chocolate cake in her recent interview as her favorite. But her rule is to eat the cake or any other sweet things like whole fruit as a dessert after a balanced meal that has some fiber, some protein and some healthy fats in it. And as a diabetic myself, I really love this approach. I hate when someone who doesn't have diabetes tells people living with diabetes, "You're not allowed to eat that because you have diabetes." What? We're allowed to eat whatever we want. Now, I would probably not go for a chocolate cake because I'm not a big fan of processed foods, but I like to have some sweet fruits like mango, pineapple or banana. And these have pretty high glycemic index, meaning if you eat them, especially on empty stomach, they will spike your blood sugar very fast. But if you eat them after a balanced meal and cover those carbs with Greek yogurt, some nuts or chia seeds pudding, which is my absolute favorite dessert, you can reduce that blood sugar spike at least by half. It really does make a difference. Alright, moving on to hack number 3 to avoid big post-meal blood sugar spikes. Drink vinegar before you eat. Jessie claims, and that's based on scientific studies, that if we have 1 spoon of vinegar mixed in a glass of water before the meal, it can reduce the glucose spike from that meal by 30% and also reduce the insulin spike by 20%. If your body still produces insulin, that is, because mine doesn't produce any insulin. I'm a type 1 diabetic. Now, the reason why vinegar is so helpful is that it contains acetic acid, which slows down how quickly food breaks down into glucose molecules. And so the glucose molecules don't go into our live stream that fast. Jessie also says that the acetic acid tells the muscles to basically soak that glucose from our bloodstream when it arrives there. And that's why vinegar should have such a positive impact on the blood sugar levels. Of course, you don't need to drink vinegar on its own. You can include it in your salad dressing, which will also get that fiber in your body. And I approve of this hack as well. From my experience, vinegar doesn't really reduce my glucose spike by 30%, but I've definitely seen like 10 to 15% reduction in that blood sugar spike. So again, this combined with the other hacks is getting really powerful. Moving on to hack number 2. Stop counting calories. I'm not joking. Jessie doesn't really want you to think of food in calories. It's because calories don't tell us anything about what's actually in the food. Calories also don't tell us anything about how we will feel after eating certain food. They'll tell us nothing about how the food will impact our physical health, mental health, and glucose levels. And I kind of agree. I look at calories, but they are not really that important to me. There can be 2 different people eating the exact same amount of calories a day. One person eating whole foods and the other person eating fast food. The person eating fast food will have a lot more blood sugar spikes. They will have more cravings. They might be more exhausted, not sleeping as well. or even have mental health issues. Now, if you are trying to lose weight, of course it might be helpful to still count calories while eating healthy. But let's be honest, living with diabetes, we already have to count carbs. We need to calculate the insulin dose. We need to do so many things. Do you really want to count calories for the rest of your life on top of all this? I don't. Moving on to the glucose goddess hack number 1. This one is really powerful again. And after that I will share a hack of my own too, which I think is super important, especially for people with diabetes who are trying to reduce that post-meal blood sugar spike. But first, Jesse's hack number 1, which is move after you eat. It doesn't matter what you do, just get moving. You can go for a walk, clean your apartment, play with the dog, go to a gym, do some soleus push-up. Jesse's coming up with all these suggestions. Just don't crash on that sofa, although it might feel tempting after a good meal. When you get moving, you will simply not allow your blood sugars to spike because your muscles will be taking away that sugar from your blood. And that's why this is so powerful. Again, I completely agree with this hack. It's really effective for us living with diabetes as well. But there is something that can be even more effective for insulin-dependent diabetics. And that is my bonus hack, pre-bolusing. Let me explain what it means and how you can do it. Just look at your blood sugar line on your continuous glucose monitor and think of this line as a rope. Whenever you eat and those carbohydrates enter the bloodstream, they start pulling this rope up and your blood sugar is rising. Insulin, as well as all other hacks we talked about today, pull that rope down. The problem is that most of the time people inject insulin and start eating right away. And when they do that, the carbs typically get into the bloodstream much faster than the insulin, and the blood sugar spikes. By the time the insulin kicks in, the blood sugar is already too high. And if that happens to you all the time, you might want to inject your insulin 10 minutes before you eat, or even 20 minutes before you eat. The exact timing really depends on what kind of insulin you use, what kind of food you eat, and how many of the other hacks in this video you are doing. Quite honestly, the perfect timing might be different for different people. You should definitely talk to your healthcare professional and maybe even experiment a bit to find the sweet spot. That's right, if you take any medication, don't go too crazy. Don't implement all these hacks at once. Take it step by step because you don't want your blood sugar drop too low too fast. Now, while your doctor is ultimately responsible for your medication, for your treatment, it's worth noting that most doctors don't have real-life experience living with diabetes. They don't suffer from this disease. And that's why in the next segment, I'm gonna show you 10 more blood sugar hacks that your doctor probably doesn't know. I've lived with diabetes for 35 years, and these hacks helped me bring my average blood sugar from 350 all the way to 110. And my HbA1c went from 13.3% all the way to 5.5%, which was the result I got during my last HbA1c test. Starting with blood sugar hack number 10 that your doctor probably didn't tell you about. You know, doctors are fantastic at many things, but they're not nutritionists. They might not fully understand how different foods impact not only your blood sugar, but also your insulin sensitivity. No matter if you live with type 1, type 2, pre-diabetes, or any other form of diabetes, or even if you're a completely healthy person, we all have one thing in common. Whenever we eat carbs, our blood sugar goes up. It's completely natural. But did you know that not all carbs are created the same? Different carbs are doing different things to our blood sugar. I'm talking good carbs and bad carbs. Take raspberries and oranges, for instance. A small portion of each has exactly 12 grams. They're both healthy, but one of these two options is better for your blood sugar. Do you know which one? Yes, it's raspberries. But wait, so how can we tell which foods are good and which foods are bad when it comes to blood sugar spikes? Well, we need to look at something called glycemic index. In our example, average raspberries have a glycemic index of 24, while an average orange has a glycemic index or GI of 35. Foods that rank lower on the GI scale, like the raspberries we talked about, spike blood sugar slower than the foods who rank higher on the GI scale. So my hack number 10 is pick foods with lower glycemic index whenever you can. Now please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying oranges are bad for you and you should never eat them again. Trust me, there are much worse things you can eat than oranges. What I am saying is that you might want to create a little cheat sheet with GIs of the foods that you eat most often. Put it on your fridge or save it on your phone. This kind of cheat sheet might help you choose the better carbs with lower GI next time you're about to eat a snack or go grocery shopping. Now, if you like to eat foods with high GI like potatoes, pasta or bread, don't worry, there are some advanced hacks you can do to still be able to eat those and not have your blood sugar spike too fast. I'm gonna talk about these advanced hacks a bit later, so keep watching. Here comes another blood sugar hack that your doctor probably didn't mention to you. This one also helps you fight against those nasty blood sugar spikes after you eat a meal, but it also, on top of that, helps you fight insulin resistance. If you keep doing this hack, your body will become more insulin sensitive and it will be able to use insulin more effectively. So you will need less insulin at the end of the day. It works literally for everyone. Now, the food that you eat plays a major role in how insulin sensitive you will be. And again, when it comes to insulin sensitivity, we have good foods and bad foods. Take an instant cereal versus a homemade oatmeal made from whole grain steel-cut oats and some fresh fruit. If you ate one of these meals for breakfast every morning for a few years, the instant cereal would probably make you more insulin resistant, while the homemade oatmeal would probably make you more insulin sensitive. So my hack number 9 is pick whole foods or foods that are minimally processed whenever you can. An easy way to do it is simply buy foods that you can find in the store in the same form that you would find them in nature. And for any packaged food, read the ingredient list on the food label. If there are too many ingredients, including chemicals and any words you don't recognize, that food is probably ultra processed and I would stay away from it. Another powerful blood sugar hack your doctor probably doesn't know: how to count carbs and how to do it right. Sure, your doctor might have dropped that "watch those carbs bomb" on you, or even tell you how many carbs a day you should eat. But did they actually teach you how to properly count carbs? Probably not, and that's a shame, because knowing exactly how many carbs you eat makes the blood sugar game so much easier, especially if you are an insulin dependent diabetic. So let me show you how to do it right. This is a food label that I found on a can of chickpeas. You can see that one serving of this chickpeas has 16 grams of total carbohydrates. But that's not where our carb counting ends. One serving of these chickpeas also has 5 grams of fiber, and fiber is a type of carbohydrate that your body can't digest, so it does not affect your blood sugar levels. And that's why I will go ahead and subtract these 5 grams of fiber from the total carbohydrates. This will get us to 11 grams of net carbohydrates per serving, which is what we really care about. Now you see that the serving size noted on the food label is 130 grams, which is about half a cup. So next thing we need to consider is, are we really gonna eat half a cup of this chickpea, or are we maybe gonna eat a whole cup? If we're gonna eat a whole cup, we need to multiply 11 net carbs by 2, which gets us to 22 net carbs. You see, carb counting is not that straightforward, and sometimes you need to do a bit of calculation. Now, what if your food is not packaged and there is no food label? What should you do? Well, there is one great tool that I really like to use, and that's a website called MyFitnessPal. This site has a database of countless food items, and I'll put a link to it down below for you. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the only way to manage your blood sugars is to go low carb. Absolutely not. Many people are on a low carb diet and it works great for them, but it's definitely not the only way to manage your diabetes well, because there are many hacks to keep your blood sugar low while still eating lots of carbs. So moving on to blood sugar hack number 7. My doctor never mentioned this one to me, but it helps me so much to keep my blood sugar in the ideal range more often. To be able to do this hack, you need to divide your day into 2 time windows, one during which you eat and one during which you don't eat. Your fasting window can be 12 hours, 18 hours, or 24 hours, which is what I've been doing lately. I eat my dinner at 6 p.m. and I don't eat anything until the dinner on the next day, again at 6 p.m. So hack number 7 is time restricted eating, aka intermittent fasting. Now, of course, I don't do this every day, and I'm not saying you absolutely need to do this, but I want to give you 3 reasons why I am doing it and why it works for me. Number 1, I noticed that fasting in general can help improve my insulin sensitivity. Number 2, during the time when I don't eat, my blood sugar don't spike. And so it's much easier for me to keep my blood sugar in the ideal range without any hiccups a lot more time. And number 3, because I'm an insulin dependent type 1 diabetic, I need to administer basal insulin every day. In theory, if my basal insulin dose is correct, my blood sugar during that 24-hour fast should be pretty much straight line. And if it's not straight line during those 24 hours, it shows me that maybe I need to tweak my basal insulin a little bit. Now, if you haven't done intermittent fasting yet and want to give it a try, please do your own research and consult a healthcare professional before you get started. Don't go crazy too fast just because I told you I do it, okay? Now moving on to another blood sugar hack your doctor probably didn't mention to you. It's the carbs we already talked about that usually steal the spotlight. But there is another component of your meal that has quite an impact on your blood sugar levels, and that's protein. You can find protein in things like meat or legumes, and it is an essential nutrient for muscle building and overall health. But did you know that protein does raise blood sugar? It really does, and that adds another layer of complexity into the whole blood sugar control game. As you can see in this graphic, proteins don't raise glucose immediately. They only really raise your blood sugar a few hours after you eat them. But despite that, my hack number 6 is add protein on your plate. Why? Because protein provides a slow release of glucose. It will prevent those sharp spikes from carb-heavy meals that are the most harmful. When you add protein, you will have a more balanced meal and a more balanced blood sugar. Now, going back to our chickpea food label, this actually looks quite good because it does have 5 grams of protein per serving. But be careful, because just like with the carbs, there are good proteins and bad proteins. I personally prefer lean proteins, so things like beans, lentil, chicken breast, or the kind of protein we can find in eggs, seafood and fish. Now, having said all this, we need to be mindful of that delayed blood sugar spike caused by proteins. Especially if you're an insulin dependent diabetic, you might want to take that into account. We already covered carbs and protein, but I want to quickly dive into the world of fats. Fats on their own have minimal impact on your blood sugar, but don't skip this part, because they do play a crucial role in the overall blood sugar control game. As you can see in this graphic, fats don't immediately convert into glucose and don't spike blood sugar like carbs do. They're providing a very steady and slow release of energy. This stability can be a game changer in maintaining consistent blood sugar levels. Fats play the role of traffic cops in our digestive system. Picture this: you've got a mix of carbs, proteins and fats on your plate. Fats are the one who step in and say, hey carbs, hold on, you're moving too fast. And they slow down that blood sugar spike. So blood sugar hack number 5, your doctor probably doesn't know, is that adding a moderate amount of healthy fats on your plate can help achieve a more stable blood sugar. The kinds of fats I consume most often are of course the minimally processed ones. Things like avocado, nuts, salmon, Greek yogurt, things like that. Or extra virgin olive oil, of course. But I try to keep the healthy fats in moderation and not overdo it. The reason why is that I noticed if I eat too much fats, then my insulin sensitivity is not that good. And when I eat the meal that's heavy in carbs and heavy in fats at the same time, and the prime example of this is pizza, my blood sugar will keep rising even a few hours after I eat it, and it will not go down for a very long time. And this is pretty much impossible to handle for any kind of type 2 or pre-diabetic body, and very challenging for me as an insulin dependent diabetic, because although I can inject myself with insulin externally, it's very difficult to get the timing right. I also try to stay away from any kind of heavily processed trans fats, including in many fried foods, and I also don't like too many deli meats and cheeses, which have a lot of saturated fat, and again, I don't like that negative impact of these items on my insulin sensitivity. Moving on to another blood sugar hack your doctor probably doesn't know. And we need to bring another component of your meal into conversation: fiber. Fiber, just like fat, has minimal effect on your blood sugar levels on its own, but it does play a crucial role in the overall blood sugar control game. The reason why is not only that fiber is the kind of carbohydrate that your body can't digest, so it doesn't spike blood sugar, but foods rich in soluble fiber make you feel full. Plus they will act as another cop, slowing the traffic in your digestive system and slowing down that blood sugar spike from the other carbs. So hack number 4 is add more fiber to your meals. Now, going back to our chickpea food label, if you still remember it, this chickpea starts looking even better now, because it does have 5 grams of fiber per serving. But there are even better fiber-rich meals I would recommend you to look into. Leafy greens, spinach, kale, rucola, and as you might know, my absolute favorite source of fiber is a healthy chia seed pudding, made simply of chia seeds, plant-based milk, cacao powder, and some fresh low GI fruits like berries. This is the only dessert I can eat all day long and still keep my blood sugar in a perfect range. I'm sure your doctor didn't know that. Now, if the hacks so far have been too healthy for you, we're gonna spice things up a little bit and talk about some hacks on how to eat the bad carbs with high glycemic index. Things like bread, pasta, or potatoes, there really is a way how you can do it. Let's start with bread. There has been a study done that proved that you can reduce the blood sugar spike from white bread by freezing it and toasting it. Toasting alone reduced the post-meal blood sugar spike in healthy individuals by 25%. Freezing and defrosting by 31%, and freezing followed by toasting the bread reduced the post-meal blood sugar by 39%. I tried it and it seems to be working. My blood sugar goes up a lot less when I freeze and toast the bread before I eat it. So I approve. Now there is another hack that has been proven to work with pasta, potatoes, or rice, all notoriously known high GI foods. When you cook these staples, you should always cook them al dente. Let them cool down and place them in a fridge. This step is super important because the cooling process will create resistant starch, which is similar to fiber and slows down digestions of the carbs. I tried this too and it seems to be working very well as well. I could even reheat the pasta and reheat the potatoes and still see the improvement in my post-meal blood sugar. Now, a quick reality check. Am I saying that now you know this hack, you should start eating white bread, white rice, and things like that? Absolutely not. Whenever I pick these staples, I always go for whole grain version of bread or pasta or rice, because I know these have a lot of more fiber and are a lot more blood sugar friendly on their own. In fact, if you got too comfortable and already thinking about eating these high GI foods, this next hack will definitely make you uncomfortable. And again, your doctor might have dropped this exercise regularly bomb on you, but did they actually tell you what kind of exercise you should do and why? Well, the reason why exercise is such a game changer is that whenever you start working out, your muscles need energy. They run out of energy very fast and they start asking for more. And the next thing your body will do is start pulling glucose from your blood and your blood sugar will go down. So the fastest way to lower blood glucose is to engage more muscles. Running, swimming, or even walking is excellent for this. And I can assure you that no medication will bring your blood sugar down as fast as a good full body exercise. Another reason why exercise is so powerful is that it can improve your insulin sensitivity and your body will be able to use insulin more efficiently in the long run, no matter if the insulin was produced by your pancreas or injected externally. But what doesn't work for me is a really high intensity exercise, like fast sprints or lifting very heavy weights. Whenever I do these, my body starts producing stress hormones like adrenaline, and these will start releasing glucose from my liver, which will start bringing my blood sugar up. And that's probably not what most of you want. So just be careful about those. Another thing I need to be super careful about when I exercise is that my blood sugar doesn't go too low. And this can happen when I have active insulin on board while exercising, which I injected earlier. Because when I contract those muscles, that insulin, which is already in my body, will get to bloodstream much faster, and that can cause hypoglycemia. That's why I try not to exercise a few hours after I took any kind of pre-meal insulin. Oh, and I also suspend my basal insulin delivery on my insulin pump at least an hour before I start exercising. Plus, having glucose tablets on you whenever you exercise, if you're an insulin-dependent diabetic, is always a good idea. For me, it's a must. Moving on to another blood sugar hack your doctor probably doesn't know. And this one might sound like a complete opposite to the intermittent fasting. And it kind of is, but I'm trying to give you options here because I know everyone is different. And I let you decide which options you want to try. Or if you don't want to try any of them, that's totally fine too. So blood sugar hack number 2. eat smaller portions. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that because I think you need to lose weight. Not at all. Where I'm coming from is that the bigger the meal is, the bigger mistake you can make when trying to calculate or estimate the carb count. And especially if you are an insulin-dependent diabetic like me, the insulin dose that you take is directly dependent on the carb count. When you eat a big meal and you make a big mistake in your carb calculation, then your blood sugar might go up big as well. And of course, smaller portions might help solve part of the problem. Another blood sugar hack my doctor never mentioned to me is such a game changer, especially if your blood sugar graph looks like a roller coaster or if you're completely lost. You see, getting the carb count right and calculating the insulin dose right for any meal is a very complex task. I absolutely don't blame anyone who doesn't get it right every time. I don't get it right every time either. But there is a way to do it right, and a great opportunity to learn what different foods do to your blood sugar is to eat simple meals that consist only of 1 or 2 items. Let's take an apple for example. If you eat an apple as a non-diabetic, your blood sugar graph will probably look something like this, going up for about an hour and then going back down. If you're an insulin-dependent diabetic like me, you need to take insulin with every meal. And in this case, eating simple meals like an apple can help you tremendously to figure out what the right dose of insulin is for that one apple and what the right timing of that insulin should be for that one apple. I personally take about 1 unit of insulin about 15 minutes before I eat an average apple, and it works perfectly for me. My blood sugar is almost flatline when I do it like this. But everyone is different, so you need to figure out what works for you. Once you figure out the right dose and the right timing of insulin for the most simple foods, then you can move to more complex meals and you will feel more comfortable in figuring out the insulin dose. And that's why the key to really hack your blood sugar is eating more simple meals and keeping a journal to learn about your body. Writing down what you eat, writing down how much medication you take and when, and writing down any kind of physical activity. And there are many apps that help you do that these days, but I kind of like the old way. Pen and paper. Many of you have booked a coaching session with me before, and we always end up having a more productive discussion whenever you have some sort of journal or notes available that we can look at to better understand your blood sugar. Guys and girls, I'm super excited because I'm currently working on developing an exclusive coaching program that will help you live full life with diabetes while achieving perfect blood sugars and lower HbA1c. This program is called Blood Sugar Academy, and if you want to learn more, click on the link down below and register your interest. I will be sure to share more information with you once the program is launched. But if you'd like to connect with me right away, then the best way to do that is my Patreon site, where you can message me directly and I always respond. When you join my Patreon, you also get access to 40 pieces of bonus content and you can support my channel. But the places in my Patreon group must be limited because I want to make sure that I have enough time to communicate with all of you. And so go ahead and join while you still can, while we still have spots open. Now, we talked a lot today about different blood sugar strategies and hacks, but we didn't really talk about my favorite blood sugar friendly foods. So if you want me to share my top 25 favorite diabetes superfoods with you, just click on this video and watch it next. I will see you there. Ciao.